Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The town of Westlake was bathed in the golden light of late afternoon. The residential streets, lined with elegant homes and immaculate gardens, seemed calm, almost unreal. Yet, an event was about to shatter this tranquility and reveal the invisible cracks in respect and justice. General Marcus Washington, a black man in his 60s, stepped out of his luxury black car with the quiet confidence that only a life of military discipline can confer. His salt and pepper hair framed a face etched with experience and resilience. Decorated for his heroic service, Marcus still carried the dignity of his rank, but tonight he was simply an ordinary citizen, driving to a personal meeting. Officer Daniel Harper, a white policeman with a cold, suspicious gaze, was patrolling the neighborhood. Harper was known for his authoritarian temperament and excessive zeal for enforcing the law. When he spotted Marcus's black sedan, he deemed it suspicious, stopping abruptly and ordering the man out of the vehicle. "Get out of your car immediately," Harper shouted, his voice echoing through the quiet street. Marcus, surprised but dignified, slowly complied. He raised his hands in a gesture of peace and replied firmly, "I am General Marcus Washington of the United States Army. This is my identification." But Harper didn't bother to look properly. His judgment, tainted by racial prejudice, refused to recognize Marcus's authority and rank. "I don't care about your titles. You are under arrest." The neighbors stopped, intrigued by the scene, but none of them moved. The humiliation was immediate and public, a respected man, a hero, treated like a mere suspect. Marcus felt the tension rising within him, but he controlled his emotions, keeping his head high. Every second spent against the police vehicle seemed to weigh on the centuries. This moment, however unjust, would trigger a series of events that would reveal institutional racism, test the resilience of a man of honor, and show that even in the face of humiliation and injustice, dignity and truth can triumph. General Marcus Washington was not simply a man who had been arrested. He was a symbol of resistance, discipline, and integrity in the face of hatred and injustice. And what seemed like a simple routine check would become the beginning of a much larger fight for justice. The golden afternoon light bathed Westlake, a residential neighborhood renowned for its elegant homes and immaculate driveways. Passers-by enjoyed the last rays of sunshine, unaware that the apparent tranquility would soon be shattered. General Marcus Washington walked calmly toward his luxury black sedan. A black man in his 60s, he carried on his shoulders the dignity of a life of impeccable military service. His salt and pepper hair framed a face etched with experience, while his eyes expressed both serenity and vigilance. Marcus had spent his career protecting others, obeying discipline, and serving his country with honor. But on this particular day, he was neither in uniform nor adorned with his medals. He was simply an ordinary citizen, driving to a private meeting. A few meters away, Officer Daniel Harper was patrolling the neighborhood. A white police officer in his 40s, he was known for his authoritarian temperament and sometimes excessive zeal. His colleagues often whispered about him, describing a man who interpreted every interaction with citizens as a test of power. When Harper spotted Marcus's black sedan, he frowned. To him, that luxury car in such a quiet neighborhood seemed suspicious. Without thinking, he signaled Marcus to pull over and got out of his vehicle. "Get out of your car immediately," ordered Harper, her voice echoing in the silent street. Marcus, surprised but maintaining his composure, obeyed slowly. He extended his hands in a gesture of peace and replied with quiet dignity, "I am General Marcus Washington of the United States Army. This is my identification." Harper glanced quickly and, without dwelling on the evidence of his rank, snorted, "I don't care about your credentials. Get out and cooperate. You are under arrest for suspicious driving." Marcus felt a surge of frustration, but he kept it in check. He knew that any sudden movement could be interpreted against him. Intrigued passers-by had stopped. Some recognized the man, but none moved, paralyzed by the scene, a respected general treated like a mere suspect. Harper searched Marcus roughly, completely disregarding the dignity of the man before him. Every movement of the policeman was filled with condescension and contempt. Marcus felt the weight of injustice upon him, but he held his head high. Rage boiled beneath the surface, but he would not let humiliation dictate his actions. As Harper placed Marcus in the police car, the boy didn't utter a word. His quiet composure and imposing stature stood in stark contrast to the officer's arrogance. Marcus understood then that this wasn't just an arrest, it was an affront to his dignity, his honor, and everything he had stood for his entire life. And what seemed to be a simple routine check would soon turn into a battle for justice and truth. The police car moved slowly down the tree-lined street, and behind the tinted windows, Marcus Washington maintained an impressive calm. His eyes watched the passers-by, some casting intrigued glances, others averting their eyes, uneasy. The contrast between the general's dignity and the brutality of the arrest was striking. Officer Daniel Harper, behind the wheel, seemed to revel in his power, unaware that every aggressive move was being scrutinized by silent witnesses. "You think you can talk to me?" Harper said sarcastically. Marcus, with his hands folded in his lap, replied in a firm but calm voice. "Officer Harper, I respect the law. I cooperate. But you arrested an innocent citizen." Harper burst out laughing, shaking her head. "Innocent? You're not telling me who I should arrest. I'm just doing my job." The car soon stopped in front of the local police station. Harper forcibly removed Marcus, ignoring the man's imposing stature and military build. Passers-by had gathered on the sidewalk, some recording the scene with their phones. Their expressions were heavy with judgment and astonishment, a decorated general, a national hero, publicly humiliated by a mere police officer. "Citizens must learn respect," Harper murmured to himself, convinced of his authority. Marcus, for his part, walked forward without a word, his gaze fixed straight and proud on the horizon. Each step was a silent declaration, he would not be broken, even in the face of humiliation. He felt the anger and the injustice, but they did not shatter his integrity. At the station, the atmosphere was tense. The officers present looked at each other uncomfortably. Some recognized Marcus, but none dared to intervene against Harper. The general was placed in a cold and austere waiting room while Harper began to draft a report full of lies and exaggerations. Marcus grabbed his phone and discreetly contacted his longtime friend, Colonel Robert Jenkins, who had worked in the army for decades and knew his background perfectly. Jenkins immediately understood the gravity of the situation. "Stay calm, Marcus. I'm coming. And believe me, Harper will regret what he did," Jenkins said, his voice firm and reassuring. Marcus nodded. Despite the humiliation and contempt, he knew that justice was never entirely absent. The battle had only just begun. And in that tense silence, General Marcus Washington was already plotting his revenge, not through violence, but through truth and dignity, weapons more powerful than any force. Time seemed to stretch out in the cold, silent waiting room of the police station. Marcus Washington, seated on the metal bench, stared at the floor with an imposing calm. Each tick of the clock resonated like a cruel reminder of the injustice he was enduring. The gazes of the other detainees and visitors fell upon him, some with curiosity, others with embarrassment. Suddenly, the doors of the post burst open. Colonel Robert Jenkins entered, accompanied by 2 lieutenants. His imposing stature, impeccable uniform, and natural authority commanded immediate respect. All eyes turned toward him, including that of Officer Harper, who felt his confidence waver. "Officer Harper, explain to me why General Marcus Washington is here?" Jenkins asked, his voice booming like a hammer. Harper, visibly shaken, stammered. There was a complaint for suspicious driving." Jenkins fixed his piercing gaze on Harper's eyes. "You arrested a respected and decorated citizen without valid evidence? Do you realize that you are treating a U.S. Army general like a criminal?" Tensions rose rapidly. Marcus remained motionless, observing the scene with a mixture of calm and silent dignity. Harper tried to justify himself, but each word he uttered seemed weaker than the last. "Colonel Jenkins, I didn't know." Harper tried, but his voice was trembling. Jenkins took out his phone and immediately contacted military headquarters to verify Marcus's identity. A few minutes were all it took to confirm that it was indeed General Marcus Washington, decorated for exemplary service. Silence fell over the station. Harper's authority had just crumbled. "Marcus, you are free to leave immediately," Jenkins said, while giving Harper a stern look. Marcus rose slowly, his movements filled with dignity. His gaze met Harper's, and without saying a word, he conveyed all the pride and authority of a man who had never been broken by injustice. The passers-by and police officers present, witnesses to the event, felt Marcus's silent power. Harper, humiliated but still authoritarian, dared not speak. His arrogance had been confronted with the truth, and he knew he was powerless. Marcus took a deep breath. Although he had regained his freedom, he knew the incident couldn't end there. He had to publicly denounce this injustice and show that respect and dignity don't depend on skin color or social status. And so, General Marcus Washington, despite the humiliation and unjust arrest, was preparing to transform what could have been a humiliation into a shining demonstration of justice and integrity. Back home, Marcus Washington stood by the large window of his living room, watching the city stretch out into the distance. The sun was beginning to set, casting orange hues on the buildings and streets. He remained silent for a moment, reflecting on the humiliation he had just suffered and how he could transform this experience into something positive. He immediately called his trusted lawyer, David Reynolds, a meticulous and persuasive man who had already defended several high-ranking Army officers. Together, they prepared a solid case regarding the discriminatory arrest, witness statements, photographic evidence, and the recording of Colonel Jenkins confirming Marcus's identity. "This case isn't just about your honor, Marcus," David said. "It's about showing everyone that no one, regardless of their rank or skin color, should have to suffer injustice and racism." Marcus nodded. He knew that true power lay not in anger or revenge, but in truth and dignity. The next day, he agreed to give an interview to the local press. His speech was calm, precise, but remarkably powerful. He recounted the events, described the humiliation he had suffered, and denounced Harper's abusive behavior, as well as the institutional racism that too many black citizens experience daily. The national media picked up the story. Social media erupted. The images and testimonies that circulated sparked an intense public debate about racial discrimination and abuse of power within the police force. Harper was immediately suspended, and a thorough investigation was launched. Far from seeking personal revenge, Marcus used his fame and influence to demand concrete reforms, anti-discrimination training, transparency in arrests, and strict monitoring of police abuses. His actions inspired the community and resonated throughout the country. In this silent but powerful struggle, Marcus Washington had transformed a public humiliation into a moral victory. His dignity remained intact, and his voice, carried by justice and truth, became stronger than ever. As the sun disappeared behind the horizon, Marcus stood tall, his gaze fixed on the future. That day, he had shown that even in the face of injustice, a man can remain invincible when he refuses to give in to fear, hatred, or humiliation. And in the silence of his home, one certainty resonated: dignity and truth always triumph in the end.